social science elements. And I know enough to know I don't know. I have an engineering and oceanography background, and I mean, all of the blue carbon projects I am aware of will end up being community development projects of a certain level, and we don't have that voice regularly talking. We have there's a group of experts that get together once a year talking on this, and they've done a lot of work on soil carbon, and we've got some policy work. But the social science element is very critically missing from the conversation, and we know enough to know we don't know. And I would really, I'm looking for somebody to help us with that particular perspective. It sounds good.
Yeah.
Yes, and I mean, even if it's back in the US, it's easy enough because it's only my 3 hours difference from you.
Yeah, 3 hours. Yes, they're on East Coast time. Yeah, my kid's sister works for double E, of course. Yeah.
So you're with the geographers.
Yes, I'm with the geographers. Yeah, I'm with the geographers, and actually, I have a bunch of questions, but so we need to.
Okay.
So we gotta get out of here, right? Okay, sure. Yeah, let me see it. Yes. We do have a good report. I did read my project on it. This is just good. No, I actually.
It.
Yes. So do you have any file?
Yes, we have.
Okay, do you have any USB?
Yes. We have it. I will send it to you. It's
I
really
a Japanese guy.
very extensive.
No.
It's like 100 pages.
Yeah, the face is like.
Yes. Yes.
My name is Steve. I'm coming to
It might be. It's outside. I can show you.
Use it while you are sliding your right. So it's much better than okay. We actually should shut down the street first. So this one is over here. Thank you. And by the way, the microphones are also, you don't need to push the push button, so you can just get it. Thank you. drive with this bike or just you?
There's another colleague of mine.
Okay. I give you that hard luck to try if it's okay.
Yeah, sure, let's try that.
Now there is no problem.
None at all.
Your event will
Go.
going to be successful.
Yeah, you should.
Hopefully.
Thank you. I shouldn't come to these things. I'll just get stressed.
Mate, relax. You're an expert.
Yeah, we're sitting in the middle. Absolutely. We're sitting in the middle. The light is back on us.
How many people are supposed to be up here? That's a number of seats.
It's not easier for me. The microphones are up. Somebody's got a message here. Thank you.
No, so I think we'll just change. We'll do part 2 separately. Do part 1 with Jessica.
Yes.
I think we need to save some seats.
So 7 or 8, and I'm gonna see.
Yeah, please save some seats. Yeah.
Are you gonna see them or what?
Well, there's
Yeah, we were very strict. They're already late.
So my proposal will be go to GCF first, just get started. So when you are on lower project,
Are you working? Thank you, sir.
I'll guide it. Just don't worry. Colleagues, can I invite everyone to settle down, please, so that we can get started? All right. So good afternoon and welcome to the Green Climate 22. We will have another one next week. With this particular event, we want to share with you all the progress that's been made in 2016 in supporting countries to be able to address their low emission and climate resilient development goals. We're going to do this event in two parts. The first part will be, you'll be hearing from the GCF, the co-chairs of the GCF, the executive director ad interim, and our directors in charge of country programming and private sector. In the second part of this event, you'll hear from two of our NDAs of countries, as well as two entities. So you'll hear it from their side on the activities that they've implemented with GCF through the course of the year. To get us started, I'm going to invite our co-chairs to give the opening remarks. Let me start by introducing the co-chair for the developing countries on the GCF board, Mr. Zahir Fakir. I'll invite Mr. Fakir to start the event by opening this event with his introductory remarks, and then I'll go on to introduce the rest of the panel as we go along. Zahir.
Thank you very much, Cliff. Just one correction. I'm appointed from the developing countries, but I'm the co-chair, together with Yuan, of a unified board. So I don't represent just the developing countries. I represent one unified board on the GCF. Maybe I should start about what the GCF is all about. The GCF, as you know, is one of those operating entities of the financial mechanism of this convention. But we have a very specific objective. And the objective that we have is to support developing countries in effecting the paradigm shift to low emission and climate resilient development pathways. So towards that end, we as a fund were given a pledge, and a pledge of 10 billion. And we were told with that 10 billion, support countries in making those paradigm shifts to low emission and climate resilient development pathways. So in doing that, we have certain core principles by which we operate. One of the fundamental principles of the GCF is country ownership and country drivenness. We at the GCF are not just about dishing out money. It's about empowering countries. It's about unlocking their potential. And it's also about promoting the domestic institutional capacities in countries. Now, a little known fact that you may think about is one of the operating modalities is working through entities. And there's something called direct access entities. Today, the GCF has 41 entities accredited to it. But what little people understand and the transformativeness of the GCF is that 17 of those entities are entities coming from developing countries. 17 entities from developing countries that operate on the same level as the IFC, as the World Bank, as the UNDP, as UNEP, that have the same standards, the same fiduciary standards, and that is transformative. That is about building domestic institutional capacity on the ground, just through doing a direct access modality. we don't think about transformation. We only think about transformation purely on the basis of the projects. We need to think bigger on the GCF. And I would like to also stress that these entities, the 17, are coming from places like Rwanda, Senegal, the SIDS, like SHREP, the Caribbean, like the Caribbean. So these are entities where in this forum you'd hear people talking about, well, we SIDS or we LDCs and we don't have capacity. We want to demonstrate to you that you have the capacity and that the GCF is there to help you build that capacity. Now, what is the aspiration of the GCF? The GCF, and as Ewan will go in through, as I call him, the nuts and bolts man, and I'm Captain Visionary, he'll talk about the nuts and bolts. What we want to do, and the slogan by which we operate, is about business unusual. Because the business as usual has got us to where we are right now. And in order to make a change, you've got to do business unusual. And therefore, direct access, the kind of investments need to be the unusual, not the kind of investments that we were looking at in the past. We want to change behavior. And it's not just about behavioral change of the projects, but the behavioral change of the very institutions that work with us, to change the way in which they engage with us, to be more responsive. So some people think that the GCF is just merely, and maybe I don't want to sound flippant, but like an ATM machine where you come with a card, put it in and get money. It's not just about dishing money out. What the GCF is doing is giving people hope. It's giving countries opportunity. It's giving you freedom. It's giving you inspiration. And it's giving transformation. And maybe let me talk a little bit about that. Hope. In our portfolio today, we have a number of projects that are coming from vulnerable countries. And here I talk about SIDS, the LDCs, and African countries. Opportunity. There are over 50 countries that are currently having some form of engagement with the GCF through our portfolio. And I'm not talking about the readiness programs, but Ewan will give you those figures and details. Inspiration. We are allowing a country like Tuvalu to dare to dream. We're giving the opportunity for Namibia, Maldives, Malawi, Fiji, Bangladesh to really take charge of their own development. The transformation in this fund. In our pipeline, and I'm not talking of what we've just approved, but the entire pipeline that we look at has the potential of reducing or avoiding 2.3 billion tons of CO2. That's what we have in our pipeline. And the kind of portfolio that we're looking at are portfolios that span green bonds in Latin America, renewables in East Africa, resilience in Bangladesh and the Maldives, coastal adaptation in Tuvalu, flood management in Senegal, sustainable energy facilities in the Caribbean, and I can go on and on and on. So this is what the GCF is all about. It's not just a fund dishing out money. It's a fund effecting paradigm shifts. But let me give you the nuts and bolts part of it, and you can take over.
Thank you. If I can get this going, so. Thank you, Zahir. How's that? Okay, thank you, Zahir. That shows we're really united. We swapped seats, and can I start by welcoming everyone? And I'd also like to acknowledge some of the other board members. And when you mention nuts and bolts, you wouldn't be surprised that Colin, who sits very close to us on the board, started to giggle a bit. But just to carry on from what Zahir said, 2016, as you all know, was a critical year for the GCF. And Zahir started by talking about the board being united and us being united as chairs. And I think when you look at the proceedings of the board meeting on the internet live, which was one of the decisions taken by the board this year, you'll be able to see for yourself how the board's operating. We're certainly proud of what we've achieved this year. There's been 3 board meetings, and during that time, we've approved about $1 billion worth of projects and proposals, 19 coming from 37 countries. And we've also agreed to provide $3 million per country to support the formulation of NAPs. We've accredited 21, I should say, new delivery partners. At the start of this year in Cape Town, we had a workshop to move towards adopting a strategic plan, which is on the internet, which helps guide our directions around policy and programming priorities. We've selected a new ED at the last board meeting, and we've almost doubled the number of Secretariat staff. To date, the GCF has approved a total of $1.2 billion, 27 funding proposals, and of that, $562 million for public sector proposals and $607 million targeted to the private sector. Our overall portfolio for the private sector is expected to unlock something like $9.4 billion of on-ground investment by the private sector and others. And that leveraging ratio of 1 to 15 with a fund that's only become operational over the last 12 months, 18 months or so, I think is a very impressive statistic. Also, the portfolio is expected to collectively benefit 227 million people and reduce or avoid emissions of 139 million tonnes of CO2 equivalent. So we've also recognised, and some of the things that Zahir touched on, around the importance of a balanced portfolio, and 28% of the proposals to date have been for adaptation, 27% has been mitigation, and 45% has been cross-cutting, addressing both mitigation and adaptation. So we've been hard at work laying the foundations to increase the volume and quality of proposals, and Zahir talked about that earlier, and we set an aspirational target that you would have read a lot about, of $2.5 billion of funding proposals this year. We'll go close to that, whether we'll actually get there or not, but it was all about this aspiration. It was all about lifting the ambition of the fund, and I think it's great credit to the Secretariat, Javier as the interim ED here, and the rest of the Secretariat team that are here, and in Songdo for the work they've done in supporting the board. So as we've seen, we've increased funding at each of the board meetings, 168 million to 265 million, and then 745 million at the last board meeting. And it would be, people would expect me to raise, as my last point, that the next board meeting is in the Pacific, in Samoa. It's the first meeting we've ever had in the Pacific, and we're all looking forward to that with great expectations. And I very much encourage you to all watch the proceedings on the internet from Samoa from the 13th to the 15th of December. So thank you.
Thank you, Zahir. Thank you, Ewan. Next, I'd like to invite Javier Manzanares, who's the Executive Director ad interim of the GCF Secretariat. Javier.
Thank you, Cliff. Thank you, co-chairs. And I would also like to join the co-chairs in welcoming you. Dear delegates, dear colleagues, I would like to echo the remarks made by the co-chairs and reiterate that the GCF and the Secretariat has been working diligently to help the fund progress during 2016. The GCF is ready to serve the Paris Agreement and showcase the fund's role in supporting recipient countries' parties to achieve their low emissions and climate resilient development pathways. In particular, in 2016, apart from the impressive numbers presented by the co-chairs, the Secretariat has delivered on the following mandates: expediting readiness support, supporting the design, formulation, and implementation of NAPs, and harnessing innovation and technology. The Secretariat will continue to ensure the highest standards of performance in the areas of its proposal approval process, accreditation, and gender considerations. The Secretariat, as has been pointed out, will be, by the end of the year, practically doubling the staff in Sondo, our headquarters. In early 2016, the board approved and adopted its strategic plan. This strategic plan sets out the key strategic measures that will guide the fund to achieve its overarching objectives of supporting countries into the low emission and climate resilient development pathways. These key strategic measures will guide the work of the fund in 2017 and over the years, and the areas are prioritizing pipeline development, strengthening the fund's proactive and strategic approach to programming, enhancing accessibility and predictability, maximizing the engagement of the private sector, and building adequate institutional capabilities. In doing so, the Green Climate Fund will need to ensure strong relationships with our NDAs, the national designated authorities, focal points, accredited entities, and other stakeholders. It is therefore our common objective to invest the fund's resources in transformational climate action in a country-driven manner. Looking ahead, we still see many challenges, but we are confident of steady progress. We are proud to have such quality panelists today, each of whom can present their experiences in partnering with the Green Climate Fund. We're looking forward to working in partnership with recipient countries and other stakeholders to achieve our ultimate objective of promoting paradigm shift towards low emission and climate resilient development pathways. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Javier, for those opening remarks. We're going to now move into a bit of a substantive presentation by my colleagues, Usainu Nakulima, who's the Director of Country Programming, as well as Jiwoo Choi, who's the acting head of our private sector facility, to give you a bit of an overview of what the GCF has been doing in 2016. So we'll go into a presentation from them, and thereafter we will hear from NDAs and accredited entities. So over to you, Usainu.
Thank you, Cliff. Can you hear me? Well, okay. So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. 2016 has been an extremely productive year. I would like, with my colleague Jiwoo, to give you a flavor of how the strategic priorities that were in our strategic plan and as outlined by Javier have been translated into our operations. One particular key objective that is in the strategic plan for us is to set new standards in terms of country ownership, direct access, and ambition for climate action. So starting with country ownership, the way we've approached this strategic objective is to think about a new programming process, because we believe that having a programming process that is originated from countries is the start of a paradigm shift. So to do so, we have engaged with countries, especially through our national designated authorities and focal points, to identify in each of them, for a stakeholder consultation process, the country priorities. This is what we call the country program. At the same time, we engage with entities which are accredited to the fund. As you've heard, we have 41 of them today, to see how they can respond to these country priorities, and also identify in consultation with countries regional or multi-country initiatives. Last, we combine the two to come up with a pipeline of projects that are country-owned and at the same time that can reflect the wide variety of capabilities of our network of entities. So today, in terms of where we are in this process, we have engaged very closely with more than 90 countries, and we are happy that the country programming process is very well advanced with each of them. 50, for instance, in Africa, 14 in the Pacific, 10 in Asia, 19 in Latin America and the Caribbean. As I said, at the same time, we are engaged with entities accredited to the fund, and direct access entities, for instance, have been very quickly have embraced quickly and in an effective way this process, and 10 of them have shared with us their entity programs in consultation with their NDAs. We are also working actively with international entities who have also shown a lot of interest for this process and who are engaging with countries to make sure that their entity program is aligned with the country priorities. The way we tried to facilitate the discussion between countries and entities is a multifold. One very effective way has been to organize what we call structured dialogue. These are events, 3 to 4 days. We did one in the Pacific, in Suva in August, and another one in Cape Town in October. And I will share with you in a second the outcomes of these events. If I take the example of the Pacific, through intense working sessions between countries and entities, we've been able to identify projects, about 33, half of them with entities identified, the other half actually had to be discussed between countries and entities. And to be more specific, among these projects, 5 were very much advanced and ready to be submitted to the fund. We found that 8 needed further preparation support through our project preparation facility. This is a facility that has been set up to fund studies or transaction advisory services in order to accelerate the process of development of projects. We have found also that many countries needed readiness support, for instance, to formulate projects out of their NDCs or out of their climate-related plans. So our readiness support program is fitted to address these kind of needs. Last but not least, we've followed very closely the guidance from the COP, and we've accelerated access to support for national adaptation planning, and at least 5 countries have requested such support. We did the same in Africa, and on this slide you can see the same type of figures. And what I want to convey here is that we are very happy with the engagement that countries and entities have shown in a very limited period of time, and the outcome is very, very encouraging in terms of the generation of the pipeline ahead of us. One key instrument that we have to accelerate the development process of these projects identified is the Readiness Program. And we've been deploying this program for the past year, and I'm happy to report that the access has really accelerated the last few months. So today we have 83 countries who have developed proposals that are being processed internally. And out of these 83, 57 have been already approved. And we have dispersed for 31 countries. This is remarkable when you compare to the level of engagement and progress that we had a few months ago. And this pace is going to accelerate in the coming months because we have signed framework agreements with key partners, including UNDP, UNEP, GIZ, and this afternoon we will sign a new framework agreement with FAO, and we will use these partners to actually double the rhythm and the pace of deployment of this program. NAPS, and I just would like to highlight the progress that we are making, that we have made actually in the past 3 months. We have 20 countries have expressed interest for support for these NAPS, and 12 have sent formal requests. We've processed in consultation with the countries and the entities that they are using, 2 of them, and we're expecting them to be approved in the coming days. Last but not least, in terms of how we implement this strategic plan, obviously the ultimate goal is to provide financing for mitigation and adaptation action. And the way we do it, as you know, is through our network of entities. And we have also made a lot of progress in this direction. Today, we have 41 entities accredited, and it's a very diverse network, including direct access entities, obviously, multilateral development banks, UN agencies, NGOs, and private sector entities. I just would like to highlight the fact that direct access is a key objective for us in terms of impacting countries through their institutions. And as you see on this slide, 45% of entities accredited to the fund are actually direct access. And we have more in the pipeline. We have 53 direct access entities who have submitted application for accreditation, which are currently being processed. This network is key for us in order to deliver the projects. And I will give the floor now to my colleague Jiwoo, who can explain to you how this translates into the GCF portfolio. Thank you.
Thank you, Zaino. Now I would like to talk about the GCF portfolio that we have built for the last year or so. GCF has built balanced portfolio by region, by thematic areas, and by financial instruments for the last year or so. For the last 3 board meetings, starting from November last year in Zambia, the GCF board approved 27 projects worth of 1.2 billion GCF funding. And the balance between public sector proposals and private sector proposals are actually there as well. So half of the amount was allocated to public sector proposals, and the other half was allocated to private sector proposals. So based on that portfolio, we expect to avoid 136 megatons of CO2 equivalent and reach like 10.5 million beneficiaries like for the next 10 to 15 years. So this is actually very brief like snapshot of the GCF portfolio. Then I would like to touch upon a little bit about the private sector operations. Before I get into each and every private sector proposal, I would like to emphasize one more time that all the proposals, all the GCF proposals come from countries' priorities and countries' needs. So there's country ownership as the core of the GCF operations. From private sector point of view, in addition to that, we are aiming to build a portfolio that can showcase climate impact, innovation, scale, and sustainability. So the GCF board has approved like 7 proposals so far. And then like here, the Kawi Safi Venture Fund in East Africa, this is first of its kind private equity fund to support MSMEs in solar off-grid and mini-grid supply chain in Eastern Africa. And the next one, the Energy Efficiency Green Bond in Latin America. This is also the first of its kind green bond. So GCF, like how it works is that GCF provides the first loss guarantee to support the issuance of the green bond backed by energy efficiency projects. So, and then this is actually the projects and programs that have been approved in 2016. As you have seen, the GCF has moved towards the project and program with more scale. Let me introduce you a few of the proposals that were approved this year. Okay, this is the Sustainable Energy Financing Facility. This is loan program that like GCF and EBRD put together. This program aims to green the operation of local financial institutions to make impact on the ground. So how it works is that GCF and EBRD set up a facility, the loan facility, and this loan facility provides loans to the local financial institutions. Then the local financial institutions lend money to the MSMEs, like micro, small, medium-sized enterprises, to adopt the best available technology in energy efficiency areas and to the renewable projects. So, and what's the one feature that I would like to highlight is that sustainability for the local economy and local banks are actually key. So what we do here is that we provide technical assistance to actually train the local financial institutions to evaluate this new sector, because the local financial institutions have not been very active in this renewable areas and this energy efficiency sector. So we provide technical assistance to educate the bank and to support MSME on the ground to recognize what's the best available technologies on the ground and support them to adopt it. So that was one of the program. And the second program, I'll make it short. I think I'm speaking too much of the time because I'm like excited about introducing, PSF proposals. So this is actually Deutsche Bank proposal. This aims to the like off-grid, mini-grid sector and renewable energy sector, also through local financial institutions. So here, the structure is a little different from the previous one. So GCF provides the forced loss tranche of the funds so that we can mobilize the financial, like the private sector investors into this renewable off-grid, mini-grid projects in developing countries. So this is the other one. And let me skip the last one. This is actually the land, Sustainable Lands Program. This is joint proposal between like Conservation International and EIB. So what we aim here is that this is the project in Madagascar, and the governments need enabling environment to attract private sector investors. So we start with CI to establish enabling environments. Then EIB follows with the investment funds, with the private sector investor, and with GCF. So this is the third project that was actually approved by the board this year. And last but not least, I actually would like to introduce about GCF's new modalities to attract new ideas from various entities. So this is call for proposals. So the first call for proposals were on MSME program. We actually believe MSMEs are critical part of the economic activities in developing countries. So greening the operation of MSMEs and supporting MSMEs in green field, actually climate field, is actually it's going to bring high impact. So we launched this first pilot calls for proposal program in early July, and we received 30 concept notes in less than 2 months. So we are actually very much excited about the progress of this RFP. And then we are making a few out of those, we are actually working on a few out of those 30 concept notes to bring to upcoming December board meeting in Samoa. So I actually look forward to introducing you about this interesting and high impact proposals in Samoa. So this is it from me. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you very much, Seino and Jivu. So that's an overview from our side. But we'd now like you to hear from some of the entities and countries that have been working to develop these projects and bring them to us. I have 3 presenters for this part of the event. We're expecting a presentation from Morocco, and while the minister had to step out, I'm hoping she's able to come back. If not, her colleague will stand in for her. But I'd like to invite at least Benedict Libanda, who's the CEO of the Environment Investment Fund Namibia, to join the panel and introduce the project that his institution has developed. This is the first proposal to be approved under the Enhancing Direct Access request for proposals that we had put out. This is an innovative initiative to strengthen country ownership. So I'll request Benedict to introduce that proposal. But I'd also like to invite Ms. Amelie Amin from the Inter-American Development Bank. She's the Chief of Climate Change and Sustainability at that institution. And they've developed a very innovative program covering the small island developing states of the Eastern Caribbean to address their energy needs. So I'll let her speak to that as well. But let me first request Benedict to speak to the project that his institution has developed and has had it recently approved. Benedict, over to you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to use this opportunity to thank the GCF for inviting us to this special event. At the same time, we are quite honored to be the first institution to access the EDA funding stream. And as such, it puts a pressure on us because we have to put the bar up as the first institution, because we believe there'll be lots of lessons learned from this facility. Our EDA proposal focus on community-based natural resource management, which is a program in Namibia that has been implemented since 1995. It's a program that devolves rights over the use of wildlife and forest resources to community-based institutions at local level. It covers more than 300,000 square kilometers, with about 200,000 people living within the confined boundaries of community-based natural resource management. In our view, our EDA proposal is aimed at empowering local community-based institutions to participate actively on climate actions with a view of producing results that are of global importance. It's a program, it's a project that is adaptation focused with benefits to mitigation as well. We believe such a project like our EDA is capable of producing lessons and experiences that can be used to replicate, as well as information that can be used to inform policy formulations that are aimed at improving participation of local communities in terms of climate actions at the local level. Devolving decision-making level through EDA is very important in our case because it promotes country ownership. This is well backed up by the Paris Declaration on Aid Effectiveness. And that local ownership is very important. In our approach, what we've done so far in our management approach is even to devolve some more rights of participation to local level institutions. For example, any projects that will come from those community forests or community conservancies have to receive a certain no objection letter from the chairperson of that particular community forest or particular institution. So we are following we are bringing the global requirements of the GCF to local level and simplifying them for their participation. I think that is very important to have all inclusive and uniformity in the way we approach our things. Our EDA is an on-granting approach, which is very important. Some might think a grant of $100,000 to a community adaptation project might seem very small, but trust me, our experiences is that such funding contribute more on adaptation capability, on enhancing resilience, on even generating lessons for future use. So the effectiveness of such funding, of small trickle funding on adaptation, to us, we have been implementing community-based natural resource management over the past 10 years or so. It has proved to be more effective in terms of improving the lives of thousands of people, in terms of building capacity and institutions, etc. So we are looking forward to this process, projects that have been approved by the GCF. On a national level, it is more on a multi-stakeholders management approach, where the committee that will be approving projects is chaired by the NDA, represented by multiple stakeholders, such as the communities themselves, the tertiary, the private sector, even a commercial bank, because we identify an opportunity to influence funding of some of those activities from the commercial entities. I think in a nutshell, I will leave it there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Benedict, for that presentation. For the next presentation, can we have the slides up for Amelie, please? So the next presentation by Amelie is going to be on the Sustainable Energy Facility in the Eastern Caribbean. Amelie.
Thank you very much. Hello? Is that working? Can you hear? Yeah? Okay, great. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here and share some information on our most recently approved project. This is our third project that's been approved. Jiwoo talked about one of our very first projects, the energy efficiency green bonds securitization project, which is starting in Mexico, moving to Colombia, Jamaica, and the Dominican Republic. And then also a more recent one, also an energy efficiency project for increasing finance for SMEs, working with the National Bank of El Salvador, National Development Bank, which we're also very pleased. But I'm going to talk about the one most recently approved, the Sustainable Energy Facility for the Eastern Caribbean, which we're very excited about because we really believe this can transform the energy matrix of this part of the Caribbean and potentially have much greater impacts to the wider Caribbean community. So just briefly, can we remove that? Okay, all right, great. So as you can see, there's a considerable geothermal potential within the Caribbean. It can be a very significant source of baseload electricity for this region. At the same time, when combined with energy efficiency, with other renewables, wind, solar, waste to energy, and some small amount of hydro, there's very significant potential to displace the use of oil that is currently the primary use of energy within most of these countries. So what is the GeoSmart facility and what are we trying to do with the concessional resource from the Green Climate Fund? Well, if you look at this, many of you may be familiar that this is kind of a technology cost curve where you see very high risks in the very early stage of a technology's development, coming down in different stages. And so this facility really aims to address the different types of risks and bring down the cost to the point then where the investments can actually be taken forward through commercial loans without any additional concessional elements. So at the very first stage, to really get the technology tested, to do all the pre-feasibility assessments, to get the technology tested, you really need very concessional resource, grant resource in the very first phase, followed by then what is here referred to as a contingent recovery grant. So a grant that would be recovered on the basis of the success of a project, particularly as you will see on the next slide, when you look at the drilling costs for geothermal. And so and then moving from contingent recovery grants to concessional loans, then along to commercial loans. And I'll just show this in another form. As you can see, there's different stages. So stage 1A being that at the beginning of that graph where the grant was required, where you really need grant to do all the studies. moving to the pre-investment, which is to do the initial drilling to test whether the geothermal potential exists in that spot. So this is very risky because it can be quite expensive, but with no guarantee, obviously, that the resource is there. And that's where you need really either grant or contingent recovery grant. As you move to the exploration phase, similarly, quite risky, but becoming slightly less risky. So moving towards more concessional loans. And then the field development phase, again, concessional loans combined maybe with some commercial loans at this stage, and then looking at all the infrastructure as necessary. So this really sets out what has already been undertaken. So this project, we've already done a lot of the assessments and studies. And sorry, just to emphasize, I'm not sure I said it at the beginning, but this is a project we work with the Caribbean Development Bank. These countries in Eastern Caribbean are not actually our client countries for the IDB, but we do work with them through the Caribbean Development Bank. So very much a partnership approach in this respect. And then looking at how different resources have been combined. So we've had already some resources from the Global Environment Facility and the Clean Technology Fund, but the GCF resource was really to take it to the necessary scale. And we also were able to introduce additional countries into the program, into the facility. We also then have some IDB, ordinary capital, as well as co-financing from JICA, the Japanese agency. And this gets channeled through the Caribbean Development Bank, who also put in some of their resource for a total $191.5 million. And as you can see, these are the countries that will be benefiting. So in terms of the concessional terms, what does this really mean for the customer, for the end consumer? Well, it means we can actually bring down the costs of geothermal, bring down the risks, and then so the costs to make the electricity as affordable as the alternative, which in this case is oil, heavy fuel oil, which can be fairly expensive, but also has a lot of both local and, of course, global pollution problems. So you see this more advanced technology, but very sustainable technology through this approach will not be any more costly than the alternative. As you can see, the blue and purple shows the different price of oil. When oil prices were much higher at $97 per barrel, geothermal was actually probably competitive. As oil prices have come down, actually, this is where you really need to have some kind of mechanism to bring down the cost of geothermal so it's also competitive. This just really shows the structure of the facility. As you can see, the Caribbean Development Bank really at the center there, working with ourselves, the different resources coming in, working with the private sector developers of the geothermal facility. Local utilities are involved through a PPA contract, and then of course consumers are benefiting through this lower tariff. So just to show you again, and these are the islands, we really feel very optimistic that this has the potential to really put these islands onto a truly sustainable energy path. And of course, by investing in this geothermal, it becomes then much easier to start to interconnect to other islands. And so really we would see this as potentially having much, much greater impact across the Caribbean region. And I do just want to add one final point, because I think it's important to note that this project also has a very strong gender component. We have particularly, well, through the Clean Technology Fund and now with the GCF, we have ensured that there's specific training to improve the opportunities for women in the labor market, both through entrepreneurships, training, improving working conditions. And so I just wanted to highlight that as an additional element important to this project. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Amalie, for that presentation. We have one more speaker. This is Her Excellency Hakima El Haite. I understand that she's on her way here. So while we're waiting for her, what I'm going to do is I'm already going to open this up for Q&A, and we'll just stop to take her presentation in between and then continue with the Q&A. So with this, I'd like to now open it up to the audience. We have about another half an hour or so for interaction. So let me see, I'll try and take 2 to 3 questions at the same time. When you, please ask a question, or if you have a comment, be succinct. Don't sort of take too much time on this. And also identify your name and organization. I see one hand there, a lady over here, and then the gentleman who's standing there. I'll come back to the rest of you later. So let me start with the lady at the back there who's got her hand up. Yeah. Oh, the meniscus. Okay. Sorry, we'll come back to Q&A in just a minute. But allow me to introduce again Her Excellency, Minister Hakima El Haite.
Thank you, Excellence. I'm so sorry, I'm under consultation, so I have a few minutes, but I would like to take this few minutes to thank the Green Climate Fund, to thank you for your support and for the opportunity you give to Morocco to deal together with you and for the accreditation of our companies. And we are very honored and delighted to have already one adaptation agency which is accredited now in Morocco, and we have many of them, maybe 7 entities under accreditation. We are very delighted also that you give your principal agreement on our project. We submit more than $20 billion project sharing adaptation and mitigation this year to the Green Climate Fund, and be sure that I will come back to you very soon after COP22 to know what are the details and how we can achieve the implementation of those projects. And I would like just to tell you how we are relating on you, not only for Morocco, but for all the projects in Africa and for the developing country. We used to know and to hear that it's very complicated to work with the Green Climate Fund. We have in Morocco BA Capital, which is a company which is used to work together with you, but you know that in Africa and in the most vulnerable countries, we don't have those capacities, and we rely on you to make it easy for the developing countries, and also we rely on you to help in financing the adaptation project. You know that the priorities in Africa are water, food security, and energy. So those 3 priorities are the one who will give the right to all the Africans and all the people in the developing country to live in dignity, and we rely on your support to do it very more easily and in a way that everybody can benefit from the Green Climate Fund. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for joining us and sharing those kind words. We'll move back to the Q&A. I did have a show of hands, and we're going to go to you shortly. Please do identify your name and institution, and be succinct in your question or comment. So we'll start with you, if you don't mind standing up so we can see you. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Amma. Can everyone hear me? Hi, I'm Amma, coming from the Dominica delegation. And in the GCF report to the COP, I believe some numbers were given on the balance between how much money had actually been mobilized and how much of that money had actually gone to direct access entities. I think the exact numbers were out of 9.5 billion, 70 million had actually gone to direct access entities. Given the importance, the panel has emphasized of mobilizing resources and giving direct access. What's the plan the GCF has for shifting the balance and how much money is actually going towards direct access entity projects?
Thank you. We'll come back to the panel. I had two more hands. One was right here, the lady up here. And then you're next.
My name is Luting Jane, come from University of Maryland. Transparency is a broadly discussed question problems during this COP among different sessions. So my question is about what is a transparency mechanism and program evaluation mechanism that GCF adopted so far, and what's a plan to enhance the transparency and effectiveness of projects? Thank you.
Okay, the gentleman standing at the back there, Sunny.
Thank you very much. My name is Samuel. I'm coming from Ghana. My question is very simple. Following from the last person's question in terms of transparency, I would like to know from the co-chair who has a lot of experience from GEF, how they are going to open access to civil society organizations to have direct access to the resources of the GCF, just as the Global Environment Facility and the Climate Investment Fund under the FIP is doing it for local communities and indigenous people. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll take another round, but let me just come back to the panel so that we can address these three questions. The first one is on the plan to expand project development by direct access entities. Perhaps I can request Usainu maybe to take that one, and if anyone else from the panel wishes to join. Usainu?
Thank you. So this is a fundamental question, and I would say an activity that keeps us awake at night. The way we approach it is twofold. First, increasing the number of direct access entities accredited to the fund. And for that, we have a special support program that is actually already underway. And I can say that 15 entities around the world are already benefiting from it. It's a special assistance that we provide to them to prepare their application for accreditation. And if they have any gaps, we can also provide support to fill those gaps. And we are extending this kind of support to 15 more entities. And we are already discussing with some of our key partners to see how we can identify direct access entities that have capacities to deploy funds at scale, because that's the other part of the equation. It's not only the number, but the also absorption capacity. So that's why we have this new initiative that we are targeting to institutions at country level that can intermediate funds, either national national funds or national funding mechanisms or banks and other financial institutions. So that's the other initiative also that we are taking. Aside from that, we have the project preparation facility that is aimed at providing support for developing studies, and direct access entities are a key target beneficiary for this project preparation facility. Thank you.
Thank you, Sainu. There was a question specifically for the co-chairs regarding from the CSO representative, and also linked to the measures that the fund is taking to ensure transparency and effectiveness. Would Ewan Zahir, you want to address that one?
Does it work?
It works.
Is it working?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. As usual, Ewan gives me the difficult tasks to respond to, and he takes the easy ones. Firstly, let me just speak to the first question. I think there's a misunderstanding sometimes when one looks at figures. If you look at our portfolio, it's 1.1 billion that we have. In that portfolio, roughly 1 billion of the portfolio is being channeled through international entities. And there are some 12 entities engaged in it. Now, one must also understand that the international entity portfolios are regional or programmatic portfolios. So they're not single country portfolios. They may have something like 20 countries in them, or 15 or 10 or whatever. In terms of the direct access entities, the portfolio is roughly in the range of 125 million. That's 5 entities in there, but those are individual country. So that is the figures in terms of the portfolio. One of the things that we're doing on the board as well is we are in the process of looking at a accreditation strategy. And there's work being done on the accreditation strategy, which will come to the board at the next board meeting to look at how we address the issue of empowering and getting more direct access entities engaged. On the question of transparency, you would know that we need to strike a balance between sometimes the amount of information that can be made available, because you're dealing in many instances with programs and portfolios that have sensitive information, such as balance sheets and things like that. But at the same time, you should know that all the proceedings of the GCF is webcast globally. So at any point in time, you are getting real life time of what is going on in the event. So it's trying to find that balance. And I must also add, as a lot of times that we as board members don't even have access to all the information itself because of the legal sensitivity of many of that. The other question about our colleague from Ghana, was it Ghana, that raised the issue about and specifically mentioned other funds, and unfortunately my co-chair on the other side has not participated in those funds, so it lands for me to answer that question. If you look at already the project, and if you heard what Benedict was talking about in terms of the enhanced direct access things, you're actually getting communities who would not be able to engage with the fund actually deriving the benefits of getting GCF resources to it. We have an entity which is a private sector, but a CSO entity like Acumen, who's doing a project in East Africa around renewable energies and that. So the issue is that in many of the other funds, one of the things that the approach has been is let's create a dedicated kind of pot of money, and we set it aside for indigenous people and that. We wanting to be a little different. We're wanting indigenous people to dare to dream beyond just a small pot of money out there. We want you to be on equal footing as any other private sector entity in that. So what we are looking at is engaging with, I engage with indigenous people's communities and that, about how do we put together portfolios and programs. Your absorptive capacity may be low, but aggregating that small absorptive capacity takes you to a level of scale. And it's about how do we help you in that, in getting the kind of portfolios in it. GCF resources is open to anybody. It's not limited to an individual country or in a certain private sector. And it's open to anybody, provided you use the system and work through the various entities that are out there. And we are looking at how we get also more community-based organizations and that engage through things like enhanced direct access, through the accreditation process. We're also looking at the issue of simplifying the process. So one of the agenda items in the meeting, at the next board meeting, is about simplified approval process, something that the small island states have been putting on the agenda, and we're going to try and address that. What you should also understand about the GCF is that the GCF is being designed to be a fund that is a living fund, an evolving fund, and a learning fund. So the policies that you have in the GCF are not static and not cast in stone. They continuously need to be improved. They continuously need to be refined, and we continuously need to raise the bar. It becomes extremely imperative that we get this kind of feedback from yourselves flowing through the fund to the board and the others, so that we shape and craft policies that are responsive to your needs. And that's a very important element from that. Hugh, and I don't know if you want to add anything.
I think you summed up. The only thing I'd mention on the transparency side is some of our environmental and social disclosure policies, and I'd also mention, as earlier, our I think very contemporary approach to gender within the fund as well, in terms of transparency around that. And I think it's a first for a lot of funds, and it'll be good to flow through into other funds as well. So, you know, I think in that regard, we're trying to be as transparent as we can. We're not absolutely perfect on that, but we're a learning institution, and I think we've done quite well in terms of where we're at.
Thank you for those responses. Yeah, let me start with the lady in between. Okay, we'll go with you first, then the lady ahead of you next, and then we'll take you. So please identify yourself and your institution, please.
My name is K.A. Acharya. I'm a journalist from India. I am a correspondent for 3 newspapers and 2 TV channels, so it's a bit complicated to tell you from where. I have 2 questions. One is about the money. From what I've understood so far, you've just had 1.2 billion of the 10 billion that's been pledged. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's been years. I know it's been pledged, but it seems to take years to come in. So what is the mechanism that you have for the money that's been pledged to actually come in? That's my first question. The second one is, yesterday I noticed that the Technical Executive Committee's operational wing, that's the CTCN Technology Network or something, they have so many requests for expertise coming in and they don't have any more money. It's drying up. They've got very little left. I am trying to find out, these are also another mandated agency, why there is no cooperation between the money here and the expertise that's there. Doesn't this set up for bureaucracy all over again? Thank you.
Thank you, Kea. Sunny, could you give the microphone to the lady just ahead? Yeah, thank you.
Alice from Monash University, Australia. Moving from the small micro applicants to the other end of the scale, I've noted that the recently established Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank, which controls 100 billion, has sustainable development as one of its Article 1 goals. And I'm just sort of, given the potential for scaling up green climate funding and flows, finance flows, has there been any approach to from the AIIB to GCF to sort of discuss possible accreditation?
Okay, thank you. We'll take one more and we'll come back to the panel. So the gentleman just ahead of her.
Thank you. My name is Irving Mincer. I'm with the Johns Hopkins University School of Advanced International Studies in Washington. Zahir, you pointed out that the GCF is open to people in all countries and to all kinds of institutions. My question is about the technology specificity and objectives of the fund. Is the fund primarily interested in renewable energy and efficiency, or is it open also to proposals, for example, for carbon capture, utilization, and storage applications in countries that need to shift from coal to gas through enhanced coal bed methane recovery?
Thank you, Irving, and sorry I didn't recognize you there. All right, I'm gonna come back to the panel. There was a direct question for you, Zahir, the last one, and then the one from Monash. I think you might want to put that to Ewan. So I'm gonna turn to the first one as well from the journalist Kea. So I'll turn to the co-chairs to address these questions. Can I? Sure. Yep. All right.
Okay. I'll come to the last one first. The last question was around CCS. All right. CCUS. Okay. In terms of the fund, we have a number of initial results areas which we have identified in terms of where we want to put our investments in that. Now, I stand corrected for my colleagues, but CCS does not form part of that results areas in that. That is not to say that, remember, we are a fund that takes guidance from this body. If this body is asking us to do that, then that is something that we would then, from the board's perspective, have a look at and action on that. There was another question about the money. We have 10.3 billion in pledges. Of the 10.3 billion in pledges, 9.9 billion of that has been signed in contributor agreements. So that money is available. Obviously, the money comes in different kinds of tranches and over periods of time. For this year, we have a programming envelope of 2.5 billion roughly. That's the aspirational goal that we have. And to be quite honest, and as Ewan has said, we're trying to achieve it, but we're not getting the proposals, the qualitative proposals coming in. It's not a question of money. It's a question of you as countries and entities and that to really come to the fund with good quality proposals. I mean, we are one of the only funds where you're sitting with money and you can't spend it. You know, that's the reality. But it's not about just dishing out money for anything. And so that's why Ewan and I have embarked on a number of engagements, both in the Pacific Islands, in Africa, in the others, talking to countries, talking to entities and that, to try and get the good quality proposals coming up to us. And that's the sad reality of where we are at, right? Maybe I'll ask Ewan to talk to the other one. On the CTCN question, you would note that we have had the first annual meeting between the boards of the GCF, the CTCN, the TEC, and all the other advisory bodies of this fund. Unfortunately, the fund cannot do budget support, so we cannot finance the budgets of other we cannot finance the budget of the UNFCCC, nor can we finance the budgets of the TECs and that. We need to find elegant ways of how we combine the work of the TEC within and incorporating them into building these portfolios and projects that incorporates the technological elements and that. And when we talk about tech, we're not only talking about high tech, we're talking about indigenous solutions and anything that is paradigm shifting. And paradigm shifting, in my view, is behavioral change. It's not necessarily getting the latest technology, changing the ways in which we do agriculture or changing the ways in which we do water management or catchment management and that. So the opportunities are there, but we are also very limited in terms of how we can use the resource. So, Ewan?
Thank you, Zahir, and it's only fitting that I respond to a question from Australia, and it's great to have someone here. So just on AIIB, you know, a young institution in our region, and I've certainly been talking at vice president level in the AIIB. Many of you will know Joachim, who was at the World Bank, who's now at the AIIB, has an interest in this area. And I think the important thing around this is there's a desire, you know, for people to be accredited entities in the fund, right? That's one way of accessing, but there's also this certainly desire by us for there to be more partnerships and greater partnerships to bring forward proposals with accredited entities. And if you look at some of the portfolio now, you're seeing that. So the AIIB will have to decide, one, whether it wants to partner with the fund, and if it does, in what form, whether that would be in applying to be an accredited entity or whether that will be partnering with others. And if you look at some of their initial projects that have been approved, they are partnering with other institutions. So from our point of view, we are as a fund encouraging all those institutions to be part of it. We're also very conscious of coherence and complementarity between the other funds, the other finance climate sort of options. So, yeah, my answer to that is we have been talking to them and will continue to do so. Yeah.
Thank you. I want to take advantage of the fact that we've got Amalie and Benedict on the panel and see if there are any questions that are directed at them. We'll have another event next week to address questions to the GCF, but I want to take advantage of them. Any questions for Amalie or Benedict? Okay, the gentleman up here, Sunny, can you?
I'm Virgilio Viana, Director General of Amazonas Sustainable Foundation in Brazil. You mentioned there is a challenge of having new projects, and the pipeline is not yet with the number of quality projects that you're looking for. And you also mentioned that there is an effort to increase organizations that are accredited, that are closer to the implementation front. So I'd like you to clarify what is the general context that you have at the moment and what's your strategy to overcome this, to engage institutions which can be less bureaucratic and more effective in not only in speeding up the process of having projects in place, but also to delivering results.
You directed that question to us, but I'm going to ask our accredited entities to take that one, because they're the ones who need to bring us proposals. So maybe they can take that one. Any other questions for Benedict or Amalie? Gentleman there.
I'm Mizan Khan, a university professor and a party from Bangladesh. I have a question on country ownership of aided projects. Since 2005 from Paris, we have Busan and Accra and all those. And one of the elements of the work program, 5-year work program to be developed for capacity building, also mentions about exploring ways of increasing country ownership. So what is the experience of the GCF, for example, to promote country ownership of aided projects? Thank you.
Sorry, what could you repeat? Country ownership of what projects?
Country ownership of aided projects, funded projects.
Okay, all right. So country ownership of funded projects. One last question for Benedict or Amalie.
In the light of projects not coming forward, is it possible for a colleague, Benedict from Namibia, to be assisted to partner with neighboring countries so that, whilst it's still in this preparatory stage of implementing, people from the neighboring countries can learn from what he has done so that knowledge base can expand. In that way, you can have this coherent, synergetic approach to projects. I'm William Ngoma from South Africa. Well done, colleague.
All right. All right, thank you. Let me start by inviting Amalie to address the question from Brazil, but also the second one on how you try and sort of ensure country ownership as you develop projects.
Thank you. Hello? All right. Well, I mean, first of all, I'd like to say we do have a pipeline ready to bring to the GCF. I think we have, over the years, in recent years, we've managed to develop the capacity to actually do these kind of transformational projects. I would say particularly through the climate investment funds and the global environment facility, through a learning by doing, we're now ready to bring very transformational projects. And we have teams that are really wanting to bring projects forward, but we are, of course, having to prioritize in line with the ones that come in, because we appreciate we can't just send forward 10 projects all at one time. That said, I think what is particularly important for us is that we can work in a more programmatic way. So we can also then bring projects that cover different countries. And in terms of the country ownership aspect of that, we absolutely, I mean, that is essential to the way we operate at the IDB. We're very much demand driven. We would not do anything without the close engagement of the country, of the government. And that's how we program our resources. We can't allocate resources without the country actually wanting that. So, and it's, of course, essential to the success of the project, particularly when we're trying to do these more transformational types of approaches. You cannot do this without strong engagement of the government, but also other stakeholders, whether it's civil society, consumers, the private sector. Of course, when it's a private sector project, it's absolutely essential to have that ownership and engagement of those people. And so, yeah, so I think very important points, but I think, and I appreciate the point that we may, in the past, we may have been slow on some of these types of activities, but I think we've generated a huge amount of capacity over the last decade, really. And so, a big part of what we have done under the climate investment funds and now with the GCF is to partner with local institutions, national development banks, sub-regional development banks, of course, with governments and the private sector, to ensure that the learning we have is passed on and developed at that local level. And certainly, and we see the readiness activities and all of the project preparation resource available as being additional resource where we can partner with in-country stakeholders to ensure that they can come forward with direct access, so enhanced direct access. That's absolutely fundamental to the way we view this fund and the way we view the climate agenda.
Thank you, Amalie. I'm going to ask Benedict to respond to the question regarding your ability to work in other countries, but also reflect on the question on country ownership. And then I'm going to turn it back to our co-chairs to close the session. So, Benedict, over to you.
Thank you very much for those questions. I will reflect on country ownership. Not much different from the previous speakers. Indeed, the closer relationship with the NDA is very important to enhancing countries' ownership. In our case, the NDA has taken a lead to identify priority areas of investment through the GCF, and what we've did is we followed those priority projects and develop alongside the aspiration of the NDA. Multi-stakeholders and our engagement approach has been one of the key in enhancing country pilot partnership. Country ownership, because this has been from a point of all inclusivity of the private sectors, the NGOs, civil society, the tertiary institutions, etc. And the role of the NDA is quite central in terms of promoting country ownership. When it comes to our availability to with regards to sharing of experiences and lessons, we are quite happy to share those experiences with our neighboring countries, including the region and other developing countries. At the moment, we are in discussion with Botswana and Malawi. We are discussing at different levels. This level of accreditation, sharing experiences, how we've gone through, and advising what to put in place when applying for accreditation. We're also discussing on the level of programming, especially EDA. There's a lot of interest from different countries wanting to learn from our process and their experience through EDA application process. And we're quite happy to share those experiences and and lessons, and in a spirit of improving access to the GCF resources. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Benedict. I'm going to now turn it over to our co-chairs in just a second for the closing remarks. But before I do that, I know there were other questions. We will have another side event next week in this room at the same time on Wednesday the 16th. So if you haven't had a chance to ask a question today, you're welcome to join us then, or even wait to meet us after this event. So with that, I'm going to ask our co-chairs to close this event for us.
Thank you very much, Cliff. Before I just make some closing statements, I think the point raised by my brother from South Africa over there, I hope you realize that we have two accredited entities in South Africa, both the DBSA and SANBI. But the more important thing is about the whole issue about knowledge sharing, lessons learned, and best practice. Now, you go to every forum and everybody tells you that, but you never see anything really concretely coming out of it. And it tends to be a very static thing about getting the information, putting it on a file somewhere, and then somewhere in some file 13, there's all these lessons learned and best practices. What you and I have been thinking about is how do we make it paradigm shifting, and how do we do it in a transformative way? And one of the things that we're looking at is how do you make it more proactive? So one of the things that we've been looking at is how do you engage the institutional knowledge that's out there to support others? Yesterday I was in an African NDA discussion, and one of the clear things that people were coming up from West Africa was the problem that the language which the GCF operates in is in English, and many of them are French speaking. Right? There's the question of a lot of people who are accredited entities and need to get some advice from somewhere or some support, and it's not major advice of getting in a whole lot of consultants with that, but basic advice of structuring something of that. So what we're looking at is trying to champion, and something you would know from South Africa, you know of Mandela Day in South Africa, the whole spirit of volunteerism, of getting entities to help one another, getting people who have experience to share that experience. I've had the discussion with Amelie in Washington. They have a vast amount of experience in the IDB, which they're more than happy to help other people, be it structuring just a financing thing or that. The thing is, what we want to do in the GCF is create that platform that can happen and grow and develop, so that Benedict can share his experiences with other entities that may want to become accredited entity to the GCF. One simple thing that we're trying to do here at the fund, and you'll see a gentleman standing there, Michelle, if you want to just stand up. Michelle is a part of the comms team. If you have experiences of engaging with the GCF or good lessons in that, we want to capture that. We want to capture it in small kinds of clips so that it's available to whoever or anybody in the future. We want to institutionalize that kind of knowledge. Right? So we are looking at those kind of things. The secretariat is going to put out some kind of questionnaire, because we want to know what is the needs out there. We don't want to be a fund that just says, well, submit things in English, but not provide you with solutions of how you can provide that. We want to be a different fund. And when we talk about business as usual, it's not just about the investments, it's the very way we do our business. The last point I want to make is that part of the motto that this fund used, the board used for this entire year, was unity in diversity. We may be diverse people coming from all over different sectors and that, but we are unified in our resolve to deal with the climate challenge. And it's not only something that's on the board level. If I look at what we have here, we have a diversity of portfolios. We have projects that are dealing with communities, the projects that Amelie and them dealing with green bonds. We have projects with agriculture and other, and there's a number of other different diverse portfolios that are out there, diverse entities in it. But we are all collectively and unified working towards addressing the climate challenge. That's what we want to aspire for. That's what we're trying to. I see a lady shaking her head here, but that's what we're going to get. Or that's what we want to do. That's the aspiration. It may not be right now there, but that's where we want to be at the point in time. The other thing is we need to do is we need to be responsive to people out there. We need to be getting your feedback. We need to improve our policies as we go. We need to simplify it. We need to be able to be engaging with everybody. We need to be creating an environment where we crowd in people rather than crowd out. So if the indigenous people have a challenge, let's look at how we engage with them. Let's look at how we provide them with a platform to engage with the fund. We want to be a fund that's a home for everybody, and not just for a certain sector or certain grouping. Hyun?
Thank you, Zahir, and I'm not going to try and compete with that passion, but I do want to say that we do refer to something in the GCF. If you watch, we talk about the GCF family, and the family is much wider than the board, much wider than the secretariat, our observers, the private sector, all our accredited entities and the like. It's the people like you that are here today showing interest in this fund and providing contributions to us where things are either not working well for you or they are working well for you. And we need that feedback so that we can adjust our processes and procedures as a response to that. So I really wanted to thank you for today. Thank you for being here. Encourage you to provide the sort of comments that Zahir talked about earlier, and hope to see a number of you again next week. I also wanted to pass on the thanks of the co-chairs to Cliff, wherever he went to, who's emceeing, to Javier and the Secretariat for the work that's been put into to today's event, and also to our own team in terms of the work they've done. And a special thanks to our two presenters from outside, Benedict and Amelie, for coming up and presenting today, which we appreciate. So thanks everybody, and we look forward to seeing you again next week. hear from you. It's great. It's excellent.